welcome to Pirate Radio. We have a new little setup here, so hopefully all of this is actually working. That would be unfortunate if it was not working. But anyway, welcome to the show. Really big show. Go ahead, pull up, get a comfortable chair, pour yourself a drink because you're all canceled. Every single one of you have now been canceled. Tucker Carlson is canceled. Dave Smith is canceled. Megyn Kelly is now canceled. Let's see. Soon to be canceled. If I mattered, I'd probably already be canceled. Basically, everyone that you like has now been canceled, and even probably some that you don't like are now canceled as well. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. It is amazing to me to watch everyone just kind of fall into the fervor, the group think, the group act, and just start doing all the things you said you didn't like about one side or maybe even your side, whatever. The last week has been quite interesting to watch. Most of it is happening on the interwebs, social media. People who celebrated the assassination of one Mr. Charlie Kirk have been fired from their jobs, have been suspended from their jobs. One guy got indefinitely suspended from his television show. That's interesting. If you haven't heard, Jimmy Kimmel is on an indefinite hiatus or something like that, and the ABC affiliates are pretty mad. I don't really know what Jimmy Kimmel said. It was in regards to Charlie Kirk and his unfortunate demise. And the reason I don't know what Jimmy Kimmel said is because I don't care what Jimmy Kimmel said. I don't watch Jimmy Kimmel Live. I have not watched Jimmy Kimmel Live, and I couldn't tell you. I never really was a big fan of Jimmy Kimmel Live. I tended to be more of when I did watch those, I preferred Jimmy Fallon for some reason. Don't know, haven't watched that show either in well over a decade. As most of you haven't either, but all of a sudden you're all obsessed with what Jimmy Kimmel thinks. And I don't understand any of that. I also don't understand how Jimmy Kimmel ended up doing and saying the things that he ended up doing and saying. I guess it was to keep the job, which how'd that work out for you? It did come with a very big paycheck. I guess I should, I was still am a very big Adam Carolla fan, and of course found Adam Carolla from, actually it originally was from Loveline with him and Dr. Drew, and then followed him into his television career with Jimmy Kimmel and The Man Show. I knew Jimmy Kimmel from When Ben Stein's Money. He was that guy on When Ben Stein's Money. The Man Show is hilarious. Of course, there's probably been no shortage of memes or comparisons this week or videos showing some of the things that Jimmy Kimmel did on The Man Show. It was a funny show. So was Crank Yankers. Very funny guy, very talented writer. Him and Adam, went their separate ways career-wise. And Adam has kind of built his own pirate ship out there in Los Angeles, which I believe he is now moving, getting the hell out. And it is funny how their careers came together, went apart, and now it appears that Jimmy Kimmel is going to be jobless. And it is interesting to me on what is going to happen there, just because he is a talented guy, even though all of you hate his guts, and maybe rightfully so to some extent. But isn't this just the same cancel culture that all of you conservatives were vehemently against? I mean, I honestly, if I was a betting man and you had me wager, I would say that ABC is taking advantage of the situation to kind of blame Trump or the right for their decision to get rid of Jimmy Kimmel because the show was probably not doing well. They're paying him a ton of money. I think we all kind of know that that format that they're in is a dying and dead format. Yes, I know Gutfeld is doing his thing, but Gutfeld's format is just quite a bit different. It's something like if you took, Johnny Carson and Bill Maher and combined those shows. That's more along the lines of what Gutfeld does, and he does a pretty good job. I also don't watch Gutfeld because I don't watch Fox News, because I'm not, fucking 60. So there's that. This is a if we go deeper here about the people being fired, one of the things that I've never really understood and no one has been able to explain it other than under the guise of safety is we have rights that are protected in our Constitution, enumerated and non-enumerated rights, which the government is not allowed to violate. And one of the things that's been very fascinating to me is how you don't have free speech in a school, public school, and you don't have free speech in a federal building or a state building. You don't have access to those buildings unless you're allowed. Just ask the J6ers. You're not allowed to take a firearm into a school or any government building whatsoever. Not only are you not allowed to take a firearm, you're going to be searched in some form or fashion upon entering the federal building, a courthouse, or what have you, a government building. Some schools do that. So how is that legal? Because of all of the buildings that you should be able to take a firearm and walk in there and call everyone an MFer that you don't like, a government building would be one of those because those are your natural rights. Protected under the Constitution of the United States of America. So no one has ever really been able to explain that other than, well, it's for safety. Okay, great. So you're not about free speech. You're not about the Second Amendment. You're not about illegal search and seizures. So where do we begin and end with that? And apparently a lot of you have shown your true colors, I guess, in the last week. If this whole cancellation thing that's happening should have you very torn, very uneasy, because on the one hand you can understand where someone, especially like say a school teacher, is celebrating the assassination of Charlie Kirk, a very good man who never hurt a soul. You would not want that person around your kids if your kids are in said school, and you don't think they should be around other kids in the school so they can indoctrinate them or do whatever or spread this vile nonsense, blah, blah, blah. I get it. You're also kind of reaching. But again, don't they have freedom of speech? Because now, if we're going to go down this road, it's going to keep going. And where it's going to go is, I saw so many people who were kind of championing teachers being fired or put on suspension, whatever it is. Some of them did get fired. So many people who were championing that flipped their wig whenever Pam Bondi talked about hate speech and that the DOJ and hate speech, and we're talking about hate speech laws at this point, even though she tried to clarify later on, blah, blah, blah. You all flipped your wig when she said the word hate speech, as well you should. But you're not holding yourself accountable you're not holding yourself intellectually honest on both of those. Because hate speech, whatever the hell that word means, is really the only protected speech. Because when someone says something you don't like, you probably don't want them to talk anymore. When they say something you do like, you're just like, it's neither here nor there, right? So which is it? when you take these ideas and you take these stances and you say, one of the things that will bother me to no end and will have me will put you in my crosshairs, proverbial crosshairs, fake, crosshairs, ideological crosshairs, is when you say something like, I'm for this thing, but I'm super pro 2A, but we all understand that means you're not for the Second Amendment, right? So it's the same thing when you say, I'm all for speech, but you're not really for speech, are you? And the people who say, well, you can't incite someone to violence with your speech, I say, you certainly can try, but it's kind of up to that person, is it not? So if I say something that can be considered inciting violence, you should be charging me and that other person with conspiracy to commit violence, or plus the violent act that person now committed, not some sort of speech violation. Because that is truly also free speech. So if you're going to go down this road, it's only going to creep and creep and creep and then crush you. That's where it's going to go. It's amazing how we don't learn lessons because of a different president or a different regime or a different letter next to a name. All of a sudden we forget all of the things that happened 5 years ago, 4 years ago. Most of it happened online, where you would get banned from Twitter, I guess Facebook, wasn't on it, Instagram. All of the social medias would just throw you off if you said the wrong thing about the coof. Everybody knows it. Everybody saw it. They would throw you off there if you said, anything that was considered against trans people. They would throw you off for any number, and we all know from the Twitter files and other documents, and then corresponding lawsuits in the years after from various states, Missouri being one of them, that it was collusion from the top, from the federal government on down, which did start under Trump, if you don't remember. It started in 2020 when Trump was still in office. That's when this stuff started. So to think that he had any sort of grasp on it is foolish. To think maybe it was coming directly from him, I doubt it. Just like I doubt it was directly coming from Biden when he was president. Now, was it coming from the regime or the people around him? Sure. I think the Biden administration was pretty well proven that they were coordinating daily, like inner circle, cabinet members, things of that nature. So there's that. But this started under the Trump administration that we know of, the Twitter files as they were known. And I get that you take pleasure out of seeing people on the left get their comeuppance, and I totally understand why you would feel that way. But how did you feel when it was your side getting crushed? When it was your side getting banned? When it was you, maybe, who lost a job? And I know, I see all the people, oh, this is karma. No, this is not karma. Quit bastardizing that. This isn't karma. This is the political hammer or pistol. This is what happens. When you set a precedent, the other side now has, when they have power, there's one pistol on the table when it comes to politics. And whichever side controls the pistol or the hammer is the one that gets to use it and wield it. Now, this is not using political power in the correct way at all to come in there and say, well, because you all did this then, we're doing this now in the name of our guy. Which, by the way, is totally antithetical to what Charlie Kirk was all about, what he did, what he died doing. Completely antithetical. Charlie Kirk wouldn't want any of these people canceled over this. Now, obviously he would take offense to it and call it out as vile, hatred, and what have you. But he wouldn't want anyone to lose their job over these things. Now, so far I've just talked about the government employees, the postal employees, whatever. That's still a government employee. When it comes to the private sector, all bets are off. Your employer is a private sector business, could do whatever they want whenever they want. You could say go Eagles and they're a Dallas Cowboys fan and yoink, you're gone. That's an extreme example, but that is something that they could do. They're not bound to freedom of speech. That's the other part that has gotten so misconstrued with it started under the lockdowns and COVID and has continued now, is that private enterprise can do whatever they want. Now, if they're doing that at the behest of the federal government or the state government or whomever, if they're colluding and they say that anyone, like I'm in the state of Oklahoma, the governor said, hey, anyone who if he says to private enterprise, anyone who bashes Charlie Kirk, they need to be fired, and he colludes with specific private companies to do so, that's a violation. That can't happen. Even though I'm sure so many of you would be like, yeah, that's cool. Let's, no, they need to go because it's so violent, so this and so that. Yes, it is. I understand. I understand the impulse, but you have to fight that impulse. You have to fight that instinct. It's not easy being, for lack of a better term, based on this issue. It's not. It's the same thing with the Second Amendment and convicted felons, and especially violent felons. They should be able to have a firearm when they're released from prison, because now they're not a threat, right? So why wouldn't you have your Second Amendment rights reinstated fully? Oh, but they're a violent felon and they can't. Then why are they out there? Why are they out there? Okay? This whole thing is going to get out of control, and you're going to rue the day that you let this happen and that you championed it. This is only going to go one way. And yes, I understand that you're just saying, so many of you have said, well, I'm just holding them to their standard, talking about the left and Democrats and what have you. Well, I don't know that you want those vile human beings who are all for mutilating children to be setting the standard at which you then abide by. That's retarded. Why would you let the people that you're antithetical to, that you have no common ground with, which we totally found out in the last week, which I've been telling you since I've been doing this podcast, and since anyone who would listen or read my Twitter, is that there's no common ground with these people. If you don't even have common ground with these people, and their outlook on politics and ideology is completely antithetical to you, why would you let them set the standard of what's acceptable and what's not? These are communist pieces of shit. Why would you listen to a communist? Why would you let them set the table, if you will? Why would you let them choose where you fight? Why would you let them do any of this? You're letting them set the standard. So you're going to hold the commie to the commie standard. Well, the commies don't have standards. They have ideology. And there's nothing above the ideology. That's why they're all hypocritical, because it's just about the ideology. It's not about some sort of standard or moral standard or right or wrong, which again is a retarded way to look at life, because if you're a communist, what's right is completely different than what a capitalist thinks is right. Hell, what a fascist thinks is right is antithetical to what a communist thinks is right, and vice versa. And they're both evil. They're both evil. So don't let your enemy set your moral compass for you. Don't be stupid. It's like expecting a robot to have emotions when you say, I'm going to hold the left to their standard. Maybe you should have a standard above theirs. You ever think about that? Maybe you should set your own standard. Maybe your standard should be, Jimmy Kimmel can say whatever he wants into oblivion because we don't watch that garbage and we don't understand who even does. Who cares? Jimmy Kimmel is irrelevant. He is only relevant because he riles up your feathers. Which means he's setting the tone for you. Who gives a shit about Jimmy Kimmel? Who cares? Is he some thought leader? No. Is he some cultural leader? No. So why do we care? You almost should hope that they keep Jimmy Kimmel on, pay him $40 million a year as they bleed themselves out financially and fade further into oblivion. That's what you should take. I mean, Jimmy Kimmel. First of all, why would you look to a comedian for your moral guidance or any sort of morality? I mean, yeah, I'm not calling all comics like, immoral assholes or anything, but if you know anything about comics and stand-up comics, I don't know that morality is like the first thing on their list. And especially when you talk about like a Hollywood comic, you're selling your soul to the devil in essence. And see, that's the other part, is that on the right, everyone talks about, you see so many, I'm a conservative Christian. Why would you listen to a antichrist type character who doesn't hold your moral values, who doesn't hold your beliefs, and now you're going to take their lead and hold them to their standard, whatever that means? You shouldn't even know that Jimmy Kimmel exists. He's that irrelevant. But here we are. I've spent the last 30 minutes talking about him because everybody is flying off the handle about Jimmy Kimmel. Who gives a shit? Watch Tucker Carlson. Watch Gutfeld, I guess, if you're, a boomer and 100. I mean, no offense to Gutfeld, but I don't know. It's like looking for your moral clarity from Bill Maher. Yes, every once in a while, Bill Maher will say something nice about a Republican or the GOP or someone on the right. I mean, if you watch or listen to his podcast with Billy Corgan, where they were talking about Charlie Kirk, and it was a really nice things that both of them said about Charlie Kirk, especially Bill Maher, and that's. But 5 minutes later, he was talking about how horrible the Republicans are in the GOP and how bad Trump is. That's who he is. That's what he is. He's dyed in the wool blue, old school liberal. I'm not sure what that term even means anymore. I'm not sure that he knows. I think he's just saying it. But to go to Bill Maher for any side of moral clarity is asinine. Is the show entertaining? Sure. Do I watch it? No. Is it worth watching? I don't know. I don't watch it. I don't look for Bill Maher for any sort of moral clarity or any side of moral guidance because he has none. He has none. He will talk about morality and he'll talk about ethics and this, that, and the other, but he's a godless atheist who hates God, or at least at some point you have to understand where morality comes from, where good and evil come from, and no atheist understands it. And if they do understand it, it's stupid or liar. That's really what it comes down to. If you don't understand where Western moral values come from, you're either stupid or you're lying because you're trying to protect yourself because you don't want to acknowledge that the Bible exists and there's some good things in it. That's really what it comes down to. So you're not based or anything like that. It's stupid or liar. You can pick one. I don't really care. That's your thing to struggle with. But to look to these people for some sort of moral clarity, especially in trying times that we're kind of in here, is asinine. Who cares? Who cares what Bill Maher thinks? Who cares what Jimmy Kimmel thinks? These guys are not any sort of moral character. They're not any sort of authority on anything. And you can look to the right and do the same thing. You can look to like a Douglas Murray. Maybe he might be a moral man. Don't know. I've never heard him say anything against morality. But he's not a free speech guy. He's proven that over and over. Ben Shapiro is not a free speech guy. He's proven that over and over. He's not a, bodily autonomy guy. He proved that during COVID. Yes, he had a mea culpa, but he did prove it. Ben Shapiro probably has a lot more moral clarity than a lot of people. And if you look to him for morality, you would probably hit about 98%. You do really well. But he's got some blind spots. There's been so much that has happened. When you use the tools of the left, you basically become the left. And from the great Michael Malice quote of, you know, conservatism is just progressivism going the speed limit. You guys keep proving that over and over again. Whether it's cancel culture, whether it's talking about hate speech, whether it's talking about, rounding up specific people or barring certain people from owning firearms or what have you. These are all tools of the left. These are all tools of the communists. That's what it is. Stop buying into it. Stop doing it. Because it's only going to be a noose that comes back and hangs you. So stop doing that. I know it's hard to not do that sometimes. You get caught up in the fervor. It's like, man, I'm so glad that nurse got fired because she said X, Y, or Z about Charlie Kirk and it was so vile. And yes, you're right, it was so vile. But did she really deserve to have her livelihood taken away from her for one stupid mistake? Wouldn't it be better if, I don't know, her employer took her aside and set her down or what have you and said, hey, why don't we take a look at some of what Charlie Kirk said and what he was about? Why don't we watch one of these videos? Like, your job's on the line here. Let's work through this. Let's really see what he was about. And I'm sure under our current system, though, HR would get involved in some sort of hate crime or something like that. See, that's another thing that no one ever thinks about. That why do hate crimes exist? Why is there a separate statute for a quote-unquote hate crime? Because hate crimes don't apply to people who look like me. So we need to make this crime more illegaler. Is that what we're doing here? That doesn't make any fucking sense. Now, I guess today, Donald Trump, maybe it was yesterday, Donald Trump declared that Antifa is a terrorist organization. Okay, I mean, I get it. Why didn't he do it in 2020? Also, how do you know who's Antifa, who's not? Is there a uniform? I mean, I know they dress all in black and hoodies and what have you, but to me, it's like the whole cartel thing, designating them a terrorist organization. Or terrorist organizations. Like, what does a cartel member look like? Hispanic? In nice clothes? Like, what does Antifa look like? Supposedly grown man who's like horrifically undersized, pasty white, and enjoys soy or diet soy. I don't know what that looks like. It sounds like Portland. Now, is there a big contingent of what we would call Antifa in Portland? Allegedly there is. I don't know what Antifa looks like. I don't know how you designate them Antifa. Why not just investigate these organizations fully? I understand when you designate them a terrorist organization, that opens up all sorts of things you can do which are illegal for American citizens. Like, I get it that you can freeze bank accounts, you can violate all of the rights, you can now use the Patriot Act, you probably get a FISA warrant, you can do all of the things we supposedly fucking hate. But now, when we put a group we don't like in the sights of them, now all of a sudden these things are okay. These things are not okay. Yes, I know they've been used against the right. Yes, I know they're going to be used against the right again. How about we just get rid of all of it? We could do that. I don't know how you can declare. So if you're going to declare what amounts to Americans as terrorists, how does that play out? Are we going to drone strike them like Obama did? Are we going to drone strike them on American soil? Because everybody's really upset that Obama drone striked an American citizen, I think twice, on a foreign country, no due process. Okay? So we're not cool when he does it, but we're going to be cool when Trump does it? Or when Joe Kent just leads an assault team and knocks down a door and smokes like 8 dudes? I don't know. That's a good comment there, B. How do you tell the difference between, let's go ahead and highlight it. How do you tell the difference between Hamas and regular citizens in Gaza? No clue. You know who else doesn't know? Israel. I have no idea how you tell them apart. I guess if one has a gun and is shooting at you, there's a pretty good chance. But hey, you don't really know. There's no uniform. I mean, under the, code of war, I guess they're all enemies because they're not wearing a uniform. They're supposed to be, like, on-sighted. Don't really know. We wrote those rules on war, and here we go. Don't know. Don't really agree with war crimes or rules of combat or whatever. It seems kind of asinine. Seems like you handicap yourself when you go fight a war. Now your enemy knows, well, I know what he can't do, so guess what I'm going to do. So there's that part. I don't know what Antifa looks like. I don't know what ISIS looks like. I don't know what Hamas looks like, mainly because they don't identify themselves. Now, yes, you can go into all the Discord servers and all this, that, or the other, which already sounds like you're violating some sort of, Fourth Amendment by launching investigations into this and hacking things. Not by launching the investigation, but by hacking into things. So, is that where we're at on the right? Is that where we're at? Because it feels a lot of Waco-y all of a sudden. Very Waco-y. You could probably just do a kind of silent investigation, infiltrate these groups, and bring them down from the inside. But there again, what even is Antifa? I mean, is this a global network funded by George Soros or someone else? Is that what it is? Because if that's what it is, you're not going to stop it. Like, these are some of the highest things out there. It would make sense that they're global and that they're well funded, because how the hell is it in the summer of love back in 2020 that people in England and Germany and France and all the other places are protesting for George Floyd when he was killed in Minneapolis? So that would make sense. All of allegedly the piles of bricks that showed up in random cities. It's pretty good planning and coordination. I do know that back then, most of us in the gun Twitter were hip to the pictures of them, and every Antifa, alleged Antifa member had radios on them. If nothing else, they all had a radio. So you're basically, what are we saying here when we designate Antifa a terrorist organization? You're going to push them further underground. This is like, early kind of National Socialist movement where you didn't wear the red band on your arm because the Germans had banned the National Socialist Party, so you were driven underground, so now you would operate in the shadows and not tell anyone who you were, and you would operate silently, which is exactly what's going to happen here. So I'm not really sure what we stand to gain here, but that's not really the question. The question is, why are the people on the right so giddy and happy about it? Why are you so giddy and happy about the violation of United States citizens' rights? I mean, without getting into the broader picture of human rights, which is what all rights are human rights, they're not American rights. We're cool with just violating the rights because it's the side we don't like. That's like watching a football game and, because I'm a Lions fan, cheering every time the Bears get a BS flag thrown on them. Yeah, I'm kind of happy about it, but hey, that same referee's probably going to call the shit call the other way, either A, because he just sucks, or B, because he's going to go, oh damn, that really wasn't a penalty, I should probably even it out. So now everything is questionable. It's all questionable. I mean, I don't. Where does this go? We just do tit for tat all the time. Where does this go? This is not going to end well, because the left wields power way better than the right, and they have no problem using the strong arm on the right. None. So what happens next? What happens next? There's a very good chance that Congress goes to the left in the midterms. What does that mean? I mean, there's nothing that ensures that in 2028 a Republican or GOP or somebody gets into power. Where does this go? I mean, Kamala Harris, as bad as she was, didn't get blown out. When you look at like the final vote tallies and all these, this was not like, Reagan Carter or Reagan Mondale. It was pretty close. You're a couple of swing states away from Harris Walls being in there. What do we think they would do? Tim Walz already told us what he would do. That fucking moron. What do you think happens when this goes the other way? We should be, we, whomever, the same people, say, what we should be doing is taking down all of the strong tactics of a federal government and corralling those in basically getting rid of them as much as we can. This whole thing of we're going to wield power just the way they did. Again, it's the whole moral relativism, and you're getting into their game. You're playing their game. Stop playing their game. Play a different game. Play a game above their game. Smash their game. Do something different. Start deporting people. That really is a thing that should happen. There is a precedent, unfortunately, in this country of deporting American citizens who are anarchists and communists. Let's start doing that. Why not do that? Why can't we do that? If you're some sort of enemy of the state, you're gone. I mean, if you're preaching some sort of like fascism, communism, anti-Americanism, whatever it is, you could just deport them. You could give them a one-way trip to Venezuela, a communist country. If you're a communist, great. We'll pay for you to go. Enjoy. So many of those people who were deported back in the 30s and 20s, 30s, I think even the 40s, so many of those people who were deported to the USSR or just flown over there hated it and came back. Hated every bit of it, came back. So it almost is the best thing to do is to take all these communists and send them to communist countries and let them understand what that really means. But to play their game here, you're only going to lose because you're not going to beat the ideology. See, that's the thing that plagues people on the right so much is they think that if I just make a really good argument and if I have all of these facts, then this person can't not agree with me or can't not see the light. Oh, yes, they can not see the light. They absolutely cannot see the light. They don't care. Again, it's their ideology. They know you're wrong. They know you're a fascist. They know that you're a horrible capitalist. They know that you're evil. They know it. They know it. With zero evidence, they know that Charlie Kirk was an evil human being. Even though anybody with half a brain and like 2 functioning brain cells can look at anything that Charlie Kirk did and go, that seems like a decent guy. Husband, father, yeah, seems like a decent dude. I don't think I ever heard Charlie Kirk curse. He might have said a swear word once. I never heard it. He was always very respectful. But they know for a fact that Charlie Kirk was an evil human being because their ideology tells them he has to be evil because he doesn't see the things the way that the communist sees it. That's how they know. That's how they know. Because if he was a good person, then he would see it my way. He doesn't see it my way. He doesn't think that we should trans the kids. He doesn't think that a man can be a woman or a woman can be a man. He doesn't think that you should be able to abort a child up to and including after birth. He doesn't believe all of those things. He does believe that capitalism is the best system ever created and that free markets work. So therefore, he is evil in their eyes. Tell me the argument you're going to make to a communist who knows you're evil instantly because you believe in this country. Tell me the argument you're going to make to convince that person. You can picture the blue-green haired chick with the thing in her nose. We've all seen it. We've all seen the video. You've probably, some of you have met them in real life. When do you, what argument do you think that you could write either now or in a year that is going to convince that person of anything? To even get that person to consider that you might have a point is impossible. It's impossible. Because they know. They know for a fact that you're evil and wrong. You know, this goes back, this whole communist, headbutting, if you will, goes back to pre-World War II. It's what makes me laugh when people talk about how Mussolini and Hitler and all the fascist countries were socialist. And they were basically communists and they were socialist. Except that the fascists and the communists hated each other's guts. They did. So that's one of the main reasons you get so many of these idiots on the left calling everyone fascist. It's not because they don't really understand what fascism was or is. It's because that's their natural enemy. 100% the natural enemy. I can't think of an example off the top of my head, but that's what it is. They're diametrically opposed to each other. They're not inherently stupid or unread or naturally uneducated. They're more ignorant and ideologically just brainwashed. That's why you get the whole Nazi fascist remarks constantly. Constant. It's because that tells you that the person saying that is ideologically captured as a communist. And they believe it into their bones. And you should never, ever try to convince that person. You should not waste your breath on them. If you were much more concerned about those people than you were Jimmy fucking Kimmel, you'd be doing a lot better with this whole movement on the right. And that's the thing that people need to focus on. We don't need to focus on Jimmy Kimmel. He's just trying to make $1 and protect his investment or his career or whatever, his job. Jimmy Kimmel holds no power. Jimmy Kimmel is a rich guy who lives a life that only so much of us could only dream for. But if you really want to fight this thing, you have to go and fight the communist ideology. We used to understand this as a country. We really did. The boomers kind of fucked that up. The second wave boomers really screwed that up. So many of them were apologists for the commies and apologists for the Soviet Union, or their parents were, who thought that Lenin and Stalin to a lesser extent, but they were already pot committed, so they had to defend Stalin, that they were really doing good over there, and man, it was really working. Wouldn't that be so good here in America? That's why Leon Trotsky was so highly thought of. Because Trotsky was the offshoot, him and Lenin as buddies, they were the offshoot, or he was the offshoot, he was the survivor of basically Leninism and the Bolshevik Revolution. And that's why you get so much of the neocon belief seemingly like socialist light, communist light, because they're all just ex-Trotskyites with a movement. Yes, we should resurrect McCarthy. Yes, 100%. You know, Joseph McCarthy and McCarthyism was a good thing. People have said that it was a bad and evil thing and a dark day in American history and this, that, or the other. But he found a lot of commies when he looked. Isn't that interesting? Now, were we a better country with McCarthyism or a worse country? I don't know. But back to the neocon back to the Trotskyites. When you take those teachings of Trotsky and you start listening to them or reading about them, it really starts to line up with what the neoconservative platform became especially after the Cold War, of like this perpetual revolution, always fighting wars everywhere. It just really didn't make any sort of sense. And then backing all of these countries that there was no interest in it for us at all. But I'm not going to get too much into Trotsky. Still need to read more up on that whole collaboration, which is just very odd to me. Rooting out commies would be a great thing. Or at least make commies afraid again. That would be really good. Like, you should be terrified in this country to espouse any sort of like communist propaganda on social media or anywhere. That should terrify you. That's really what we need. We need them scared again. We don't need them in institutions teaching kids. And that's why I blame the second wave of boomers, is like, they took that, were kind of quiet about it, but really kind of just, in certain areas, in certain classes, in certain universities, and certain things, they would push it, and it would perpetuate. And that's how you get all of these kids, how you get all of these teachers. There's so many teachers that are communists. Because why do you need a bachelor's degree to teach like 6th graders? You're just reading out of a book. That's what most of them ever do or did. They don't really know the subject. Plus, after a semester or a year anyway, don't you kind of know it now? And what does a 6th grader actually know? Nothing. Whatever you told them or her. So you can kind of, the amount of just blatantly false and dumb things that I heard teachers say over the years that at the time seemed wrong and later found out was wrong is staggering. And I went to a good public school, allegedly. Whatever that means. So, time for the hard stuff, boys and girls. Cheers. Maybe maybe Mr. Proper 12 himself will take over Ireland. Mr. Conor McGregor. That'd be a good day for Ireland. But we see all of these like communist movements all over the Western world. We used to have a good grasp of what communism was, what it stood for, what it meant, and why it was a bad thing. And now we have these like, I don't know, because it's gone, or at least the big threat of it is gone, people have this like, I don't know, it's they think of it fondly for some reason. Like the architecture sucked, which that has bled over into our country, of just crappy, dull, architecture. The cars sucked. Well, there was only one car. The cars were terrible. Their buildings were terrible. Their infrastructure was terrible. Their farming was terrible. They had no food. Their clothes were terrible. Their shoes were terrible. I mean, what about communism is there to like? I mean, the only successful thing that communism ever produced was an AK. And they couldn't really, outside of the AK, they were like, well, just make a bigger AK with a longer barrel that shoots a different cartridge. I mean, I gotta give it to them as a decent platform, but that's it. They can't even grow wheat. Shit. In Kansas, they can't not grow wheat. It's everywhere. It's unbelievable. You know, to think fondly about the Soviet Union and communism. I mean, the internet exists, right? Like, people can look and see how much better Russia is now than they were as the Soviet Union. I mean, the prosperity that they've endured or had since the fall. I don't know, people will point to like China and it's like, well, that's communism. They're getting more, that's more like fascist than it is communist at this point. When you have the state in coordination with the companies, it might be called the CCP, but I don't know. You're really like, I don't know, really flirting with fascism, a fascist form of government over there. I guess what I'm trying to say is I don't know what the hell we do at this point. Other than the whole cancel culture thing is ridiculous. It works. It doesn't work either way. I mean, it's just, you know, the pendulum, I tweeted about it numerous times in 2020 and 21 and 22 about the pendulum. When it swings back, it's going to swing back hard, and it is swinging back really, really hard. You know, it is really hard to care about some POS who celebrates the murder of a great man like Charlie Kirk, and then they get fired, and it's like, it's really hard to care. I tweeted something earlier this week of like, it's really hard to maintain like calibration on my based compass. Like, it's really difficult because these people are just so vile, and what they're saying and doing and gleefully. You know, it's one thing to think it personally, privately, but to shout it to the world is just, it's insane. Like, I even as a guy who's speaking live on a podcast right now, and to the like 8 people who listen later on, like, to shout to the world your glee for a man dying, for a good man dying, is pretty wild. Like, I don't have that in me. Oh, am I getting all these notifications? There. It's never a good day when a person has to be put down. That's not a good day, because the reason they had to be put down was not good either. You know? So it's not good. It's not a great day, but you understand it. And so I just don't really understand why you would celebrate the death of a good person. I really don't. I mean, were these people gleeful when that poor woman was stabbed to death on that bus or train or whatever it was on public transportation in Charlotte? I don't think that was a good day. I don't think it was a good day when George Floyd died. I don't think the cops killed him, but that wasn't a good day. It was a wasted life. I don't think it's going to be a good day when they, you know, prosecute, convict the killer of that poor woman and put him down. That's not a good day. Because to get to that point, a lot of bad days had to happen. We might call it justice. We might call it a culmination of things. But it's not a good day when that happens. We shouldn't want those days to happen. They're going to happen because humans are humans and human nature is what it is. But those aren't good days. And I don't want to see people getting on there gleefully talking about the death of even a murderer. Like, it shouldn't be celebrated. You can, if you want to post something like good riddance, justice is served or whatever, I get it. I don't know. Probably don't do it. Probably in your best interest not to, but, I get it. But it's not a good sign for our country when people are gleeful over the murder and assassination of a good man. That's not a good sign. That's not a healthy country. That's not a healthy society. And there was no shortage of it. And I think it's equally unhealthy to then exercise retribution through getting them fired or other things. I don't think that's a sign of a healthy society. And there's a lot of people I saw who were, helping and engaging to try to get some of these people either fired or suspended or whatever. And again, I don't necessarily blame you. What I guess I'm really trying to say is, maybe take a beat. Maybe instead of sending that really spicy incendiary text or post or tweet or whatever, I don't know, man. Maybe take a beat, read it again, save it in your drafts, come back to it in a day, few hours. I don't know, maybe also unplug from the internet at that point. But to exercise retribution might feel good in the moment, but I think in the long run it's not going to feel too good for you. And you might have been completely right in doing it, but that it was not a good thing to do. I understand they would not show you the same grace, but again, we're not letting them set the tone for what we believe and how we're going to operate. That probably is the biggest takeaway from this, is to you set your own standard. However you get there, through Christianity, through Judaism, through Islam, or you're just going to pick and choose the best of all of them. However you get to your morality, to your code, to your standard, doesn't really matter so long as you have a solid one that does not harm other people, and that finding grace for people sometimes, and I'm as guilty as a lot of people, but to find some grace and to do the uncommon thing in a situation is one of the best things you can do. It really is. It's easy to get riled up and say the bad thing or get somebody fired. But it's not easy to take a beat, to think about it, and maybe don't do that thing. Because maybe you can affect change in a different way. Maybe you could reach out to that person and say, hey, can we rethink this? Maybe watch this, maybe do this. And if you do that and they still don't do it, then you know for a fact they're a dirty, godless, inhuman communists, and they should be dealt with accordingly. After a fair trial, of course. But just remember that communists are not people. See you next time.